Hello again and welcome back to Craft Aquatic. I'm Matt G. In this episode, we'll be going behind the scenes of setting up for the biggest one-day frag swap in the U.S. The New England Frag Farmers Market is a very special event to so many reef hobbyists and vendors in the Northeast, and it holds a special place for me because last year I made my very first video about attending FFM around this very time. Now, a lot is changing and on pause right now, and I'm hoping to see more events like this in 2020. Given current social distancing challenges, I can imagine most of us will be spending more time this year maintaining and upgrading our home systems. So if you have some additional unplanned for time at home, I'd love to hear about the projects you're tackling in the comments below. But now, without further ado, let's go behind the scenes and see what it takes to set up a one-day frag swap of this magnitude. I showed up around 4 p.m. the day before the swap to capture some hobbyists and vendors moving their carts full of hardware and livestock into the school. Here's a quick shot of one of the main hallways pre-set up.
OSA down here. Reef guys are going to tuck down here. Reef Weeds is not here, so we don't have to worry about Rachel. So there's one less spot.
John Swanson is the visionary and lead coordinator of FFM, here to tell you a little more about what's going on.
So right now, the hallway is partially filled. There are obviously no crowds here yet. We're working on getting everything set up, but tomorrow this will be a bustling reef show. There will be tons and tons of people filing in and out of the rooms with bags and coolers, and it's Reefer Christmas is really what it is. For where we're at and how long we've been doing this, it's organized chaos is the best way to describe it. The advantage that I have is that I have lots of students around that know how this works and know where we're going and what we need to have done. So they've already grabbed tables. I'm walking around helping with one thing and 10 other things are getting done at the same time. So I owe it to the students that work for me and the students that have graduated that come back who have done this now for some of them 10 years. Total number of vendors for this year's Frag Farmers is right around 100. So I think it's more vendors than most shows. It's certainly more vendors than your typical sort of small one-day show. One of the big things that a lot of the vendors have to do is bring in water. So they will use water that we provide for them. We'll provide the water, they'll take it, they'll pour it into their tanks, and then they have to heat the water up before they can put their corals in. So one of the big steps is taking the water from the carbuoys that we've provided or the buckets that they've traveled. And some of these people travel for 10, 12 hours with buckets of their tank water to get it in, warm it up, get it acclimated for the corals so that they can put their stuff in and get everybody happy for tomorrow when the crowds come. A lot of these people are bringing their frag tanks from home, they're bringing their frag tanks from the shop, they're loading them into their vans, their trucks, their cars in some cases. They're traveling a couple hours to get here. They're unloading their tanks, their lights, their pumps, their heaters, all their corals. They're lugging it in, they're setting up their station the way that they like it. Tanks are set up, they're putting their heaters, their pumps, getting the water acclimated. It's a lot of work to do it. Somebody follow me with a Sharpie. I want to take these pictures because I know where they are. Some of them say where they are, some of them might not. And there is a set of pictures that goes along with the special raffle that we're doing, the Elite raffle. It's very exciting. That special picture has 12 corals on it and they're in 12 different places. It's like a coral scavenger hunt, kinda. Oh, dude, that's amazing.
Very cool.
That is
So
amazing.
this is an upside down Acropora cardus of some species, something like that, and like a red dragonish. And then that's actually like an F shape. And then these are two elegance corals that I just happened to find that kind of made that.
Kind of
shape.
made the
And
L
then,
shape, yeah.
You know, use a torch skeleton. You know, nice big torch
That's
skeleton
awesome.
makes the middle of the M, and that's what I visioned. And then just found a couple sags, and this is on a frag plug, which kind of represents to me that this is a frag swap, and that's what it started as. And you get a little frag in there too, along with that. So
Hey,
there you go.
That's
Hang that up
amazing,
over your
man.
neck.
I appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
I can't tell you how happy I was to have captured that moment between John and Chris, but I guess that's what you get for being a fly in the wall. Here we have one of our bigger vendors, the folks from Wet Pet setting up their station, and a representative from Coral View raising the Reef octopus banner. One of the things that strikes me the most is the variety of setups we get at the Frag Farmers Market. We have hobbyists who are essentially aquaculture experts bringing in setups large and small. And the reef art has taken on a whole new dimension in this hobby. Here we have OSAs set up at the very end of the main hallway. They tend to get here nice and early just to be certain they have time to cycle and heat the large volume of water they bring in. I've been enjoying seeing the pairings of tank and light combinations, but reef keeping events like this are not just relegated to the hobbyist and vendor. You'll very likely have heard of these guys who specialize in the content side of the aquarium hobby.
Hi, I'm Peter Cherrick from the Reef News Network.
And I'm Jeremy St. Louis from the Reef News Network. How y'all doing?
And we are probably the biggest podcast in the world for saltwater aquariums and reef keeping.
Definitely the biggest in the U.S., and we have a lot of fun. We're at shows, and Peter's usually the one at shows, but we are in our hometown pretty much.
This is our hometown show. This is the very first show we did the week before our first episode launched. And
Yes.
this show is our 2-year anniversary. What's it like setting up for this show? Yeah, it's always stressful. I mean, even for us, it's, so our challenge is we have a big desk set up that we bring in, and it didn't fit through any of the doors. So we found the one door in the whole school that was able to be opened up into double doors. And we had
take
to
it apart a little bit.
Take it apart and work with the janitors for sure. But,
Yep.
it's no matter what, whether you're bringing tanks, fish, equipment, whatever it is, it's always stressful to get here because you're running around, you're scrambling, you always think it's gonna be, oh, it's a piece of cake, I've done this a million times, but then every time you get to one of these things, it's always a challenge. Like
And you've always forgot something, or something
Absolutely.
goes awry. It's always something. So basically, just stay loose when you're trying to set up, because it's gonna work out in the long run.
Maybe.
If you have yet to listen to the Reef News Network podcast, it is excellent. And if you'd like to learn more about Peter and Jeremy's setup for FFM, check out episode 105. I wanted to give some time to some of the vendors to tell you about some of their setups, so here's Greg Demos to start us off.
So I go for a small tank, obviously, and it's light, it's acrylic, right? It holds just enough for me to have a great show in terms of the livestock I can fit in here. It's simple, and just a little MP, a little maxi jet to run it, the right lighting, of course, and then you're up and running pretty quick. I mean, I wouldn't time myself, but probably in and out, hour and a half, and I'm good. You got to get the water up to temp, and sometimes that slows things down. But thankfully, no snow on the ground, and it's pretty tempered out, so we'll be okay, I think, with getting this temp. The shows that I came years and years ago, for me, it was like, wow, I'd love to be able to get to a point where I can sell here, where I could do what these guys are doing, and that. I enjoyed that aspect of it, and after a while, you get there.
Yeah,
Yeah, and this is a great show too. John does an awesome job. The people, everyone that comes, they're all fantastic vendors. The staff is wonderful, and it's reasonable. You're in a school, you're not in a hotel, so for a small-time guy like me, it's affordable, it's convenient, and he gets a great draw. So I love coming here. So setup like this is pretty quick. You've got a holder here. The guy I bought this from did a great job engineering, these racks and things, so you can just go and go quick. I put heat pads in there, so temp is almost everything, and that certainly helps. But it's also, the faster you move, the less worry things like temp is, the less handling you do, the better. You learn how to plan for the worst and hope for the best.
My name is Megan Schultz. Me and my dad, we worked really hard of getting all of this stuff set up for tomorrow. And it's just not about how much stuff is gone. It's what people like about the corals. I like about the corals that when they go under the blue light, they like go to different colors. But when they don't have the blue light, it doesn't look so good. I'm looking forward to seeing all my dad's friends and my mom's too.
My name is Hanny. Last name is Haleo. Everybody calls me Danny, so a lot of these guys might know me as Danny. Well, the one thing that I've learned is I always bring my own water because the corals are pretty acclimated to the water I have. Sometimes even just the slightest difference of parameters will make the corals be a little shy. They don't want to show their best color. Zoas won't like to open up, so I always bring my own water. So they feel right at home. And these were packed probably no less than a couple hours ago. So, I just try to, as little stress as possible. And just trying to, keep it simple. Just a very simple frag tank. I have a simple return pipe, some basic plumbing just to keep the water circulating in the tank. I put some filter floss into the overflow so that it just catches any debris that might be floating around. I use really old school AI Soul Blue lights. I have a ton of them, and they're actually really great lights. I have probably about 20 of them at home, and they do most of my aquaculture for me. I've had them, and I keep using them. Fortunately, can't get parts for them anymore, so I keep having to buy old ones and take them apart for parts. So basically, I just pack them up in little deli containers. They're quick, they're easy. Pack them in styrofoam and bring them on down. We just keep them in a cooler, that way they maintain the temperature. If it gets too hot in the car or too cold in the car, this will give us a little bit of a buffer. Bring whatever you think is beautiful. A lot of guys like to bring the name stuff, but you got a lot of people coming in just looking for easy to grow corals. So bring a little bit of everything. And don't be afraid to bring, the lower price stuff, because you got a lot of kids coming here, want to start their hobby, don't want to spend $100 on an acro, they want to buy a $20 piece and go home and enjoy it. So bring a little bit of everything, I say.
So it looks like everything is progressing since we last checked in. Tanks are getting set up, products are getting put out, everything is well on its way.
See it again? Hold on, you can let it hang a little bit. It's okay. I'm Bob Schmale from Exotic Fish and Corals in Milford, Connecticut, which is about an hour and 10 minutes away from here. And we love this show. Every year we come down here, we have a great time. We're gonna be setting this one up for a lot of the frags. That'll be set up like zoanthids and torches, hammers, favias, favites, all those on here, mushrooms, bounce mushrooms. The other tank here we're gonna do are gonna be bigger whole mother colonies, which would be like different types of brain corals, big zoos, bigger showier pieces that are already grown for like 6 months to a year's time. For the people that have a big tank and want something a little beefier. We set up the Reef breeder lights up here, which are already programmed. Same water from the system that we're gonna do. A lot of the pieces that we brought in are all like healed up for 3 or 4 months and cut and looking nice and pretty, hopefully. As Noah is doing right now, we're bringing another system in here now. And what we do is we start bringing in like the tanks, the lights, get everything set up, get the water going into these bad boys, and then we'll get the heat, temperature, make sure everything is on point with that, and then we'll start putting the corals in there. And then we'll put the pumps on, get the flow going, make sure the corals are looking good and they're responding properly so they don't have their mucus and slime and everything else showing that they're stressed. So we have things that we'll use to counteract that to make sure they're happy and healthy and clean. And then we hope for the best overnight, and then tomorrow's showtime.
Tony Capomola, AC Corals. Because we just arrived, water's a little cold. It's probably about 40 degrees outside. We need to get this back up to temp. Toss a couple big heaters in there. We're at like 74.5. So once we get around 76, 77, we'll start adding them. The most difficult thing is obviously the travel, the packing up, and making sure everything is all right the next morning. That is key. One thing that helps is adding carbon. That keeps everything nice and clear.
Do you add anything else?
That's it, carbon. Some guys throw in some ChemiPure in there, depending on what you have. I've been using the carbon reactor. Most guys here will. Seems to do the trick.
Some vendors are completely set up, water warm, coral in, while others, well, haven't even shown up yet. It's around 8 p.m. here, everyone's got to be out by 9, and I'm seeing plenty of tanks that aren't yet up to temperature. From talking to a couple hobbyists, I've learned that there are a few vendors that show up the morning of the event to set up their systems. Here we have the wet pet section. They've been here since I arrived. They come year after year and they have this thing down to a science. It's 8:52 and here's one room that's totally ready for the doors to open tomorrow morning. As you already know, this event takes place in a school, which makes it a particularly interesting challenge to set up. Many convention centers allow for vendors to arrive very late and set up through the night if necessary. As you can imagine, a school has strict guidelines for when the premises must be locked and secured, which is maybe comforting for the hobbyists leaving their precious coral overnight, but a challenge when it comes to setting up around hobbyist work schedules. With that said, most of the hobbyists and vendors here seem to be well seasoned, each having their own little tricks and methods for expediting the process of setting up. Having not yet participated in one of these events, I feel I am gathering some great ideas for when I plan on hopefully attending as a vendor next year. It's been a long day of filming and I'm a bit far from home, so it's time to head back to the hotel, charge up my batteries, and get some rest for tomorrow morning. I was happy to see that the hotel I stayed in had a cichlid tank and a koi pond in the lobby. So here we are back at E.O. Smith High School in Storrs, Connecticut. It is Saturday, day of the event, and there are already people lined up to get in the door. And inside the venue, it is almost showtime, checking out the completely set up classrooms. Everything looking good, neat, all water up to temperature, corals placed in the displays, most livestock looking ripe and healthy, everyone ready for the doors to open, and the crowds of coral-hungry hobbyists to flood in. The venue's open, so far so good. Here's some of the art that I actually purchased and brought home. And here's Chris Kaz teaching his coral workshop, his painting workshop. And I wanted to show you a bit of what these hobbyists are working on because I just think this stuff is brilliant. And also artist and Reef hobbyist Rachel Fogel teaching her painting workshop. The raffle was fully stocked with some of the best livestock, dry goods, and equipment available today. And here was my favorite setup as far as just visually. I love the racks on the side, the back, the bottom, and it just draws your eye in and offers a really unique perspective for viewing these colorful frags. One of the things that sets the New England Frag Farmers Market apart is the vendors don't have to pay all that much to have a space here, so they can sell coral for a very reasonable price. And as you can see here, you could get coral from anywhere from $5 to $25 and up. And Greg's Corals is an example of that and up that I mentioned earlier, but he has some super high-end, very nice pieces, some stuff that I haven't actually seen available in person yet until now. As I like to do at the end of these videos, I'm going to leave you with some images of some of the beautiful coral available at the New England Frag Farmers Market this year. And again, here's John.
these guys are all farmers. They're growing these corals at home. And the beauty of the Frag Farmers Market and any coral show really is that these guys get to come and show off the corals that they've grown. They have these beautiful corals. Some of them have designer names. Some of them are just things that they've grown at home that don't necessarily have names, but they get to come and show off and share their corals with the larger reefing community. And one of the beautiful things about reef shows is that you see people's tanks and people's livestock that you never get to see except at reef shows. So these are people that, and corals that I'll only see here. I'll go and buy a piece, and we've successfully propagated in another tank with an aquaculture coral.
Thank you for checking out this video on setting up for the New England Frag Farmers Market. Hopefully it gives you some insight and ideas on what you can achieve if you already attend these types of shows or plan on participating in your first. If you'd like to check out the original video, which will outline in detail an entire day at FFM, I'll leave a link in the description. Until next time, stay safe, healthy, and remember that in reef keeping, nothing good happens fast.